Hello, my name is Jessica and I will be presenting the evaluation report for the newly implemented scorecard at BFCO. So a little background about the company, I'm sure you're all familiar. It is a 3-year-old SaaS company with just about 12 employees, very small team, and there is a strong focus on company culture and organizational productivity. So with that being said, when there is a low performing sales department, which I will notate makes up half the company, increasing turnover rate within that department, thus resulting in a flat revenue, something's got to be done. So that brings us to our scorecard. The CEO implemented this in the beginning of January. He's also the hiring manager, and its purpose is to hire only candidates that align with the company culture, values, and the company mission, of course, and also are actually qualified for the position itself. So how it works, the hiring manager will choose about 5 to 10 competencies based on that position and that relate to the culture, and he will then form interview questions that relate to those specific skills. He is going to give each one a minimum acceptable rating that the candidate has to at least meet, otherwise they are disqualified. For example, if he believes that experience is definitely needed for the position, then he is going to probably give that one a 3. That just means that the employee needs to be graded at least a 3 based on his response. And the reason we're not going to give that a 5, which is excellent, is because it's highlighted in green. And that just means that it's something that's easy to change. So they don't have to be an expert in sales just yet, because they can gain that experience on the job. They just at least have to be good. So that's where that 3 came in. Another example would be integrity. Now this happens to be one of the values at BFCO, and it's also highlighted in red, meaning it's hard to change. It's part of your character, so you're not going to be able to gain integrity necessarily. So he's probably going to want that to be excellent. A candidate that has excellent integrity to align with the company culture and fit in. So if the candidate does not give a response that would be graded a 5, he's disqualified. So ideally they are going to meet the expectations and hopefully they'll exceed them. But if they don't, they've got to move on. If so, then they're a good fit and they're probably going to be hired on. So getting into the evaluation design, we are going to go over the questions, the collection methods, how we're going to measure success, and so on. Let's get into those questions. We are going to be asking if the hiring method reduced turnover rate, did it increase sales revenue, and did it increase employee performance? And we are going to find this out by looking at the HR records. Those are going to tell us our turnover rate, and then we're also going to pull out the financial statements so we can look at that sales revenue. Now, the CEO bases employee performance off of sales revenue. If the sales revenue is high, then the employees are probably performing low. If the sales revenue is not so high, then they're probably not performing so great. So we're going to look at those as positively correlated there. The records are going to be collected from the beginning of November through the end of March. Keep in mind that the scorecard was implemented in the beginning of January, so our data is going to be about 2 months prior to the scorecard and 2 months after. So what are we looking for? If there is a decrease in turnover rate, an increase in sales revenue, and an increase in employee performance, we are going to deem the scorecard a success. So again, we are only going to be looking at those HR records and financial statements. And this should definitely suffice because it is that hard objective data that you as stakeholders are more likely going to find reliable. So those are definitely the perfect instruments for this specific purpose. Our population is going to be the sales department. More specifically, we're going to be looking at data collected on 9 sales representatives. That's going to make up our sample. And because we know exactly who we are collecting that data on, and it is such a small sample, we are going to use purposive sampling. I'm going to show the revenue on a line graph and the turnover rate depicted on a bar graph. And this is so it's easy to visualize those local changes between each data point. And since we are wanting to see just an increase or decrease, this is going to make it really easy to do that. You'll be able to tell right away. So getting into the results, The sample description is made up of 1 existing employee and then 8 new hires, totaling those 9 sales representatives that I mentioned before. More specifically, this is where it came from. So at the beginning of November, you had just 1 existing employee. Then you had 2 new hires and 1 separation at the end of the month. That left just 2 existing employees in the beginning of December. You had no new hires, but you did have 1 separation. So at the beginning of January, you have 1 existing employee, no new hires, and then another separation. That means at the beginning of February, you have nobody in the sales department. But these 3 new hires were based off of the scorecard, so it makes sense that there are no separations at the end of February. You had 3 more hires based off the scorecard and no separations. So that is looking good. Now the results of the analysis, this is looking at the sales revenue. So you see that it was definitely flat November through January, just sitting here at 97. In February, it increased to 111,000, and then in March, up to 123. So you do see an increase there. Looking at the turnover, you see that November, December, and January, there's an increase, and then it drops all the way to 0% in February and March. This was when the scorecard was implemented, but this is when those new hires actually started. So the fact that February and March have a 0% turnover rate, that looks good too. But you do see that decrease there. So going back to our evaluation questions, we are able to actually answer them now. So did the hiring method reduce turnover rate within the sales department? Yes, it certainly did. Did it increase sales revenue? It did. And because it increased revenue, we can say that yes, it also increased employee performance. So these findings definitely do tell us something. Positive culture and atmosphere is a strong indicator of employee performance, and employees who are aligned with the company values and culture are more likely to perform well. And this is because when they actually believe in the company mission, those organizational goals aren't just the company's anymore, but the employee makes them their own. So they're going to be more inclined to perform better. They're going to be more motivated. Organizational goals are more likely to be reached when employees perform well, and turnover rate and organizational performance are negatively correlated. So the higher the turnover rate, probably the lower the performance. Now, what does this mean for BFCO? BFCO must initiate ways to continually increase that motivation within the workplace in order to retain the employees. BFCO must continue to focus on employee longevity efforts, and they must strongly consider influencers of productivity performance to meet company objectives, and they should utilize the scorecard for interviews not only with sales representatives, but for all open positions as well. So my recommendations to you as stakeholders is that yes, the scorecard is a success and its application should be continued. The only thing is I would recommend another scorecard evaluation assessment in the second quarter for April, May, and June, and this is just to determine the sustainability of its success. So thank you for your time. That's all that I got.